Welcome to Legacy Lounge, the podcast where you'll discover how to lead with purpose and build a legacy that matters. I'm Brin'na, your host and leadership coach, and I am here to guide you on a journey to experience a life of fulfillment, both personally and professionally, without compromise. In each episode, we'll uncover the power of leading authentically, starting with self-leadership. Because true leadership is not just about directing others, it's about inspiring them to willingly follow your lead. So if you're ready to step into your full potential, show up authentically for yourself and others, and create a lasting impact on the world, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Hello. Today's episode is going to be quite different. And honestly, we're going to get deep, pretty deep. And we're going to talk about the truth about success and why self-sacrifice is not the answer. What I'm about to share is one of the most personal stories that I've ever told on this podcast. Because for 11 years, I didn't just like my job, I loved it. I actually loved my responsibilities. I loved my level of influence, and I especially loved the people that I worked with. I loved it up until my body physically couldn't love it anymore. For roughly 18 months, leading up to Q4 of 2023, I was in a daily battle with myself. Every morning, I would wake up trying to convince myself that it would pass, that it had to get better. I mean, people had been there for 30 plus years. Surely they weren't feeling this way, or the weight of this heaviness, this wrongness the entire time that they were there. The toxic politics that come with in and out of corporations is one thing, but the facades, so transparent that they were practically screaming that something wasn't right. And everybody just kind of looks around like, yep, that's not good. And I do want to recognize that pushing through looks different for everybody, everywhere, in every situation. But what I am speaking about today is about my experience. And every single day for 18 months, I carried around this impossible choice between two paths. Keep going along with what my career was and as planned, or stay true to my values by voicing my concerns and seeking real resolutions. That's a heavy burden to carry, especially for so long. Then came the moment that changed everything. The weight of that decision finally crystallized into something I could no longer physically ignore. What I thought would break me, my value, my worth, my entire legacy of leadership up into this point of my life actually became a turning point. There I stood at the crossroads, staring at yet another severance package on my Target office desk. And it wasn't the first. They kept offering bigger ones, each wrapped with the golden handcuffs of an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement that would silence my voice, silence my truth, and silence the experiences that were happening that were absolutely not okay and crossed the line a lot. And in that moment, while also internally battling severe panic attacks to the point of taking medication every 4 hours around the clock just to keep my heart rate stable to avoid having a heart attack before my 33rd birthday. I had to make a choice. accept the money and the silence, or stand firm in my conviction that some things are worth more than a paycheck ever will be. And what followed were some of the scariest and darkest moments of my life. Last November and December found me in the basement of rock bottom. I could not sleep, barely was eating. I was crying almost every day while getting ready for work. And every single day, I was watching myself completely disappear into somebody that I didn't even recognize anymore. And I want you to know that I'm sharing this with you today because it matters not just for me, but for every single leader who is currently, has been, or will at some point likely suffer. Don't suffer in silence. Believing that sacrifice and suffering are the only path to success, that ain't it. So let me paint a picture of what corporate success looked like from the outside, because it looked great. A senior director, a district senior director at Target. I was responsible for over $500 million a year in business while overseeing 10 different stores across 2 states, thousands of team members. And I had climbed that ladder so fast, but also in my mind, it was exactly what I was supposed to do. And I was crushing it. I loved my job. I loved my team. We're delivering. We stabilized broken. We got talent to elevate to levels that people never thought they could. And on paper, it looked good. But what success looked like behind that scene was the character anxiety from the movie Inside Out 2. Talk about a movie that made me cry. It was like watching myself in a mirror. That anxiety became so severe that it turned into panic attacks, uncontrollable panic attacks. I needed medication every 4 hours. I was going to the doctor's office asking to run tests on me because something else has to be wrong. There's no way this has any tie to stress or anxiety or my career. I've worked here for 11 years. There's no way this would just now be happening. But slowly but surely, those panic attacks became a part of my everyday life. In my office, between meetings, calls, and store visits, in front of my team. Awful. I, at home or not working, was drinking way more than usual just to try and numb the stress and the feeling of the weight of everything. And to be honest, honestly, just to not feel myself or have to look at myself because I was so unhappy. I was missing moments, not only for years working in retail, that's part of the gig, you know that, but the moments that I could be around my family, the occasional vacation that I could sneak in, I was either physically absent most of the time, but definitely mentally checked out. And I know I am not alone in this. If you're listening right now and this resonates with you, as if you are the someone that you know that has felt this way and felt trapped in this kind of silence, or you know of somebody that is, believing that this is just the price of success, I want you to know something. This is not normal. It's not. And it's not okay. And most importantly, that is not what real success looks like. Not at all. So before we jump into this next section, everybody just take a deep breath, myself included. Okay, now we're going to move into the turning point. January 2024. That became my turning point. Not because everything magically got better. Trust me, it did not. It changed because I finally had to admit to myself, something's got to change. I started therapy, both individually and with my husband. And you know what's fascinating? I needed my husband to understand not only what I was going through, but how to also support someone that is battling anxiety, panic attacks, and depression all at the same time, while also grieving the loss of their own identity. Because that is exactly what it was. A complete loss of myself. My self-worth, my self-value, my ability for self-love, all of it had become so intertwined and tangled up in other people's expectations and definitions of success that I didn't even know what it was for myself anymore. But what therapy has taught me, and what I wish somebody would have told me years ago, is that I was placed in some people's lives to show them true and unconditional love, while they were placed in mine to teach me about self-love and self-worth. And I want to share something that really changed my perspective. Have you ever heard of Dr. L. David Mech, M-E-C-H? If not, he is the scientist who coined the term alpha wolf. But here's the interesting part. He spent, after announcing that to the world at that time, that he spent the rest of his career trying to correct his initial misconception. Think about that for a minute. The very person who created this idea of dominant, aggressive alpha leaders is also the same person who had the courage to say, I was wrong. And you see, the true alpha in a wolf pack isn't the one that is charging ahead at the front. They are at the back. They are ensuring that nobody gets left behind. They lead through protection, not dominance. They lead through support, not force. And this brings me to one of the biggest myths about leadership, that success can only come through self-sacrifice, that it's supposed to be all or nothing. Let me be crystal clear. That is not leadership. That is self-destruction disguised as dedication. And here's something I need you to really hear me say. Leadership is not about your job title. It's not about how many people report to you. It is not about the size of your budget. Leadership is about the power of your voice and how you choose to use it. And I know what some of you are thinking right now. Oh, but I'm just a blank, blank, blank. Stop right there. Do you know how many times I have heard people diminish their own ability to influence by starting a sentence with those words? Way too many. But every single time, they are underestimating the impact that they could have. Because here's the truth. We are all leaders. We are leaders in our companies, in our families, to our friends, to our kids. Everyone is constantly watching, listening, and learning from you. You might be the person saying exactly what someone else is desperately holding on to hear. a team member that is silently struggling with anxiety. Your story of getting help might be the permission to seek support themselves. That colleague that's questioning their worth, your boundary setting example might be the blueprint that can change the trajectory of their own life. So let's talk about something that most corporate training programs miss entirely. Emotional intelligence in leadership. It's not something that is typically taught in most corporate settings, but it can absolutely be learned. It is about having a growth mindset, about being willing to say, here is my perspective, here is my opinion. Help me expand my viewpoint, change my mind. It's about being open to feedback, to evolution, and to becoming more human, not less. You know what I've learned through all of this? The most powerful thing that you can do as a leader isn't to have all the answers. It's to bring back the human element into every conversation. It's choosing authenticity over armor. It's saying, I don't know, but we'll figure it out, and we'll figure it out together. And as I record this episode, almost exactly a year after some of the darkest moments for me personally, I want you to know something. Your voice matters. Your well-being matters. And most importantly, you have the power to redefine what success looks like, not just for yourself, but for everybody else that is also watching you lead. So today, instead of homework, I've got a gift. I have created something for my legacy listeners. And for me, I don't want you to roll your eyes when you hear me say this, but it is a gratitude and reflection journal prompt. But don't give up on me yet. Almost a year ago, I started grasping for any avenue of support I could find. Every journal under the sun, every book about anything that I was feeling, desiring, or just flat out trying to figure out. And through that experience, and now looking back and reflecting on what works, I pulled out the most impactful pieces and put it into this packet for you. And that alone dilutes so much of the time and effort that has to go into finding what is going to work for you. So I built it for you. It helped me rebuild my own foundation when I was rediscovering my own voice. And sometimes the most powerful leadership tool, it's not a strategy deck. Sometimes it's just a blank page where you get to reconnect with you. So if you want to get your hands on this guide, I've set up something special. In the show notes to this episode is the link with the code BRW, my initials, and you'll click that link, enter the code, and you'll find 3 powerful questions waiting for you. You have to answer those 3 questions in order to get my prompt. The first question is, what's one expectation of success and rather successful leadership that you are ready to challenge or to let go of? The second question is, how would your leadership style change if you prioritize your well-being just as much as you prioritize your results? And finally, question 3, what's one truth about leadership that you wished somebody had told you sooner? As we close this out, remember, your journey to authentic leadership starts with one brave choice, just like mine did. Last October into November was crazy, but I'm better from running straight through it. Choose your voice, choose your truth, and choose to lead in a way that brings humanity back to leadership. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. And if this episode resonated, please share it with somebody. who might need to hear it too. Don't forget to grab your journal prompt. The link is in the show notes. And until next time, keep choosing authenticity over armor and lead with purpose. That's it for this episode of Legacy Lounge, a podcast dedicated to empowering you to lead with purpose. Remember, leadership begins with you. When you're connected to your values, strengths, and authentic self, you show up powerfully for your team, businesses, and everyone you lead. To authentically lead others, you must first lead yourself. I challenge you to consider, how are you investing in your personal growth to create a legacy that you envision? Thank you for joining me in the Legacy Lounge. If this episode sparked any thoughts or inspired action, I'd love to hear from you. I'm your host, Brin'na Rollins-Williams. Connect with me on LinkedIn or other socials, and let's continue the conversation. Remember, your legacy is built one intentional step at a time.